Hello guys and gals and welcome. So we're going to be covering some more Codex of Power entries, and today we're going to be covering the Barbarian Codex of Power entries. So we're going to go over all the Codex of Power entries and talk about them. And do keep in mind, as I've said in the beginning of all the videos as I've gone over these, the Codex of Power entries are the minimum versions of these powers. You can find better versions of these powers throughout the game. Also, there are definitely legendary affixes that do not exist within the Codex of Power, so keep that in mind as well. And lastly, keep in mind that this is the beta, and some of these Codex of Powers may be subject to change, at launch. But let's go over them one by one, and let's talk about them and what they could potentially mean for the characters, right? So the aspect of the Ancestral Echoes. Lucky hit, damaging enemies with Leap, Upheaval, or Whirlwind has up to a 40% chance to summon an Ancient to perform the same skill. Can only happen once every 5 seconds. It's kind of interesting. The Ancients, by the way, are the same Ancients from Diablo 2, the ones that we all fought, Mascot, and so forth and so on. And it's interesting. Next is the aspect of Ancestral Force. The aspect of Ancestral Force is Hammer of Ancients quakes outward, dealing 32% of its damage to enemies. So quaking outward would be like, little cracks in the ground and stuff like that that would potentially hurt them outside of generally the AoE radius of the ability. So it's probably going to make the ability dish out more damage in an AoE pattern as opposed to a more single targeted attack. When it hits that particular target. So we get some nice little pulsing quakes that come outward and deal more damage, which is nice. So if you are going to be using Hammer of the Ancients, that might be one you want to look into. Aspect of Anemia. Lucky hit. Direct damage against bleeding enemies has up to a 31% chance to stun them for 2 seconds. That's actually really nice. And my Barbarian would really like this one, but I don't have access to it because it's over in... Actually, no, I could get access to that one. I didn't get access to that one. We'll have to do that in open beta. Honestly, stunning monsters is very useful because a lot of these monsters in this game will hit you pretty damn hard. So it's nice for them not to hit back. Aspect of Berserk Ripping. Whenever you deal direct damage while berserking, inflict 22% of the base damage dealt as additional bleeding damage over 5 seconds. Now that could be interesting to add into my Barbarian as a berserking setup. I'm not really sure how I could get the berserking in there, but maybe we could try and figure something out. Who knows? By the way, berserking is a effect which grants 25% increased damage and 15% increased movement speed. We also have Aspect of Bolcathos. Aspect of Bolcathos is Leap creates an earthquake that deals 164 physical damage over 4 seconds. While standing in earthquakes, you gain 5% increased damage reduction. So this would definitely be something that you would use on a Leap Barbarian. Leap is actually pretty useful as a movement ability too, so getting around and doing things. I would often use Leap to attack though. So like one of my main uses of Leap was to leap into the boss. Like if the boss ran away from me, hell no, come back here. And I'd leap on top of him. So in this particular case, when it comes to a boss, you would leap on top of the boss, cause the earthquakes. The earthquakes would give you some damage reduction in the process and damage the boss. I consider that a win if you're going to use leap. It might not necessarily be something that you would definitely want to use, but definitely an option. Next is the aspect of the Dire Whirlwind. Whirlwind's critical strike chance is increased by 5% for each second it is enchanneled, up to 20%. So the longer you can keep Whirlwind active, the more crit chance you're going to get. Now, Whirlwind does actually have some ways that you can make it almost infinite if you utilize Fury Spender abilities and things like that will cause Whirlwind to generate Fury depending on the number of monsters that are around it and so forth and so on. So I could totally see this working very well with a Whirlwind build, specifically around trying to keep Whirlwind active like all the time. So that should be interesting. Another one is Aspect of Echoing Fury. Your shout skills generate 2 Fury per second while active. So if you do happen to build a specific shout like Warcry, which is kind of nice because it has some movement speed buff on it, the longer it is active, the more Fury you will gain. So you can use that as a Fury generator, maybe to help with your infinite Whirlwind. Next is the aspect of Iron Warrior. Iron Skin grants Unstoppable and a 10% damage reduction. If you guys are unaware, Unstoppable makes it so that control impairing effects are completely removed and prevented during the duration of the Unstoppable effect, which is definitely very nice. And I'm assuming that the Unstoppable lasts as long as Iron Skin lasts. So as long as Iron Skin is up, you are unstoppable. By the way, the Butcher that likes to ambush people in the dungeons has permanent Unstoppable. Aspect of Numbing Wrath. Each point of fury generated while at maximum fury grants 1.3 fortify. Now, that's really interesting. So that's a way that you could potentially build fortify on a character if you have a basic skill, probably like your generator, that generates an insanely large amount of fury, and would actually give some positive bonus to essentially having maximum fury all the time. And on top of that, could be combined with some of the other abilities which enhance damage while at maximum fury, and also abilities that give you special effects while fortified, by the way. So fortified characters take 10% reduced damage. When you become fortified, you have more fortify than your current life. So essentially how barriers work, or how fortify works, is it just keeps fortifying your life up to your maximum. And then once you have reached your maximum and you go above it, you then become fortified. So it's kind of like a weird combination of wording here. So adding fortify to your character doesn't make you fortified. I know it sounds weird, but getting that fortify amount up above your maximum HP applies the fortified effect, which is 10% reduced damage. All very interesting, but honestly, just having maximum, a large amount of fortify is definitely nice. Aspect of Perpetual Stomping. Damaging an enemy with a kick or ground stomp resets leaps cooldown. So this is another way that you could potentially spam leaps, and if you're going to spam leaps, get lots of earthquakes too from the one that we saw earlier. Aspect of Tempering Blows. After swapping weapons 6 times, gain 46 fortify. So this is something very specific to the arsenal system, and if you are going to be switching weapons all the time in your arsenal system, this might be something you want to look into for a little bit of defensive mechanic. If you're not going to be swapping weapons, you'd probably just pass on this one. And next we have the aspect of the Relentless Arms Master. Gain 20% increased fury generation while all damage bonuses from the Walking Arsenal key passive are active. Now I've seen a couple of these as I've been going through the legendary effects, and what it's talking about is there is a capstone effect on all the characters, and if you have one of these, it is specifically beefing up or dealing with directly the passive and the passive effects. So to utilize this, you have to have the Walking Arsenal capstone, and then you're going to be able to increase your fury generation while the Walking Arsenal key passives are active. And it's kind of cool for there to be legendaries that directly affect the capstones. I think that's pretty neat. Next is the aspect of the Unrelenting Fury, which is killing an enemy with a core skill. Refunds 10% of its base fury cost. Can only happen once per skill cast. So probably not good for Whirlwind, since Whirlwind, I think, is a channeling ability, and you'd only get it once at the beginning of the ability, so that wouldn't be very useful. Brawler's aspect. Enemies damaged by kick or charge will explode if they are killed within the next 2 seconds, dealing 420 damage to surrounding enemies. So this is an interesting one. So if you're kicking monsters all the time or charging at them with the barbarian skills, and you can kill them quickly enough after they're hit with that ability, they pop like corpse explosions, which sounds pretty damn cool if you're going to go with a kick or a charge build. We also have Death Wish. Gain 46 thorns while berserking. So this would probably be very good with those very nice thorns builds. I've seen a couple of them floating around. We have Earth Striker's aspect, which is after swapping weapons 10 times, your next attack will overpower and deal 30% increased overpower damage. Overpowering deals bonus damage based on the sum of your current life and fortified life. So overpowering is kind of like a, from what I understand, it's the same. If you played Lord of the Rings Online, it's the same as a Devastate, which a Devastate is basically like a double crit. So in that game, you had a crit chance, and then you also had a Devastate chance. And if you crit, you could also then therefore devastate the target as well. So in this case, I think it's crit and overpower are both kind of like together. Next on the list is the Iron Blood aspect. Gain 2% damage reduction for each nearby bleeding enemy up to 10% maximum. So this would be very nice for my Bleedbarian to help him get a little tankier, because obviously I'm bleeding everything. Everything is bleeding on my dang screen. So I mean, I'm applying multiple bleed effects on every single monster that can possibly be out there. So I would be hitting that 10% maximum damage reduction all the time with this particular ability. And it really depends on how you've got your character set up, but that one would be good for mine. I also have Relentless Berserker's aspect, which is Lucky Hit. Damaging an enemy with a core skill has up to a 20% chance to extend the duration of berserking by 1 second. Double this duration if it was a critical strike. So berserking is basically a state that the barbarians go into, which gives them the 25% increased damage and the 15% increased movement speed. And basically this is just giving you a way to extend your berserking effect almost indefinitely with your core skills, especially if your core skills are hitting a lot and you are able to keep that berserking effect up indefinitely. There are a lot of bonuses and things that you can get for keeping that berserking effect up indefinitely. Next is the Slaking aspect. Lucky Hit, you have up to a 30% chance to gain 20 Fury when Rend deals direct damage to at least one bleeding enemy. Now, I didn't really have a lot of fun with Rend when I played around with it, but I also, I'm going to be honest with you, I was having a lot of fun with some of the other abilities. And but having the ability to regain Fury from the ability would definitely be nice. Although Rend is definitely an ability you would want to use on a bleeding target anyway, because the entire purpose of the ability is that it consumes the bleed and then applies that bleed damage in full, which is definitely a plus for a bleed damage character. Next on the list, or last on the list, is Veteran's Brawler. Each time a core skill deals direct damage to an enemy, your next charge or leap deals 15% increased damage up to 225%. So this is another one that would definitely be good with a leap build or a charge build, especially with that one that causes them to explode. Although you'd probably would want to get the one that also reduces the cooldown of leap so that you could spam it, you know. Overall, some very interesting ones, although as I played Barbarian, I definitely did find a lot of even better ones, or rather more useful ones for specific builds as I was leveling up. And the thing about the Codex is you're not going to have every entry in here, and you're not going to have the best versions of those entries, but it will at least allow you to build a character out of them. And then later on you can find the better versions or the other ones that are not in the Codex. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're just talking about Codex entries for the Barbarian. And as always, keep watching.